Well, first, President Trump over the last 5 years has had a lot of crazy ideas. He had a few good ones, but a lot of crazy ideas when it comes to foreign policy. This idea of annexing Greenland is the worst idea ever. It's the dumbest idea ever. It's the worst idea I can remember in American foreign policy history. And I teach a course here at Stanford on all 250 years of it. This is the worst idea ever. And let's just remind everybody why it's the worst idea. If there's really a threat from Russia and China, we can put our forces there. We can put our missiles there. We can build the dome, the missile defense system, without annexation. If we need minerals, we can contract for them. We can invest there. So it does nothing to do with our security. It has everything to do with Trump's vanity. This is a vanity project. He wants Greenland to become Trumpland. And it's just as simple as that. And the letter that was revealed today shows you that this is just about his personal interests, not America's interests. So we have to stop it. And our allies, I applaud what they're doing. They're standing firm. They need to. But so do the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and the American people. Every presidential candidate should pledge right now, if this happens, God forbid, we will reverse it. When we win in 2028, there should be legislation posed tomorrow to vote on a resolution that says we will not invade our allies. There are many things we can do. We have to push back on it because the stakes here are really, really big.
Sarah, the ambassador lays out, I think, a very clear indictment of what this administration is attempting to do, the very nature of the president's manic and somewhat, jarring letter today. The response, though, I think is important. I think, as the ambassador noted, not just the response from our allies, but from the political leadership here at home. But I just want to help people understand a few things. Mm-hmm. If y'all sitting around thinking that anybody with an R behind their name in this town are going to propose anything like the ambassador just said, y'all just need to go ahead and hit that bottle real hard, because that's the only, kind of infusion of energy you're going to get on this subject. Because the reality of it is left to those who believe in democracy. It is left to those who are going to be voting in November. It's left to the citizens of the United States to put the check on this president. I know, when the president says, the world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Are you high? I mean, seriously, this is coming out of the president of the United States? I mean, so how should the American people gird themselves against this sort of maniacal, threatening tone that the man with his finger on the button, the man with the call of the military, could in fact push us into a major conflict with our allies that could lead to very, very terrible outcomes downstream?
Yeah, I don't say this lightly. I think this might be the most mentally ill, deranged thing that Donald Trump has done to date. To be threatening our allies and wanting to go to war potentially over Greenland when his reasoning doesn't even make sense. He says we need Greenland because Russia and China will take over Greenland if we don't. But then he invites Vladimir Putin to sit on his board of peace. It make sense for me because it doesn't make any sense. And as Michael laid out, there's plenty of other solutions we could do with the Danish government if we wanted more minerals, for example. But Trump is not doing that. He's alienating our allies. And I think the voters who voted for him are really frustrated because people did not vote for him to take over Greenland. They voted for him because they wanted more affordable health care. They wanted lower costs of groceries at the grocery store. They want to be able to buy a home. And these are not the things he's prioritizing. Instead, he's prioritizing this over his own vanity. And so I think that people need to forcefully push back and call upon their members of Congress to be out there and telling them that they need to push back on Trump because they don't want to see us go to war over Greenland, because that is not what he was voted into office for. And the only Republican I've really seen show most spine on this is Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska. And
go Big Red.
And he is out there saying that if Trump tries to go through with this, that he will be impeached. And that's the type of language that we need to be seeing from other Republicans. And so the American people need to be putting the pressure on their members of Congress and saying, we don't support this, because public polling shows that Americans don't support this and they don't want to see this.
I mean, it was interesting to me that Don Bacon sort of was coming from the vantage point of like, well, if he's even serious about like that, I don't know what to make of this, right? This is so ridiculous that I am not certain how I'm supposed to contend with it. Ambassador, I take Michael's point about where Republicans are on this. We have heard from a few. We've heard from Tillis. We've heard from Murkowski. And perhaps some of the harshest pushback has come from Senator Rand Paul. I want you to take a listen to what Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had to say this weekend and the pushback that he got from Paul.
What is the national emergency that justifies these new slate of tariffs?
The national emergency is avoiding a national emergency. That it is a strategic decision by the president. This is a geopolitical decision, and he is able to use the economic might of the U.S. to avoid a hot war.
There's no emergency with Greenland. That's ridiculous. And the idea by the secretary that, oh, this is to prevent an emergency. Now we're declaring emergencies to prevent emergencies. That would lead to endless emergencies. And that's kind of where we are now.
Ambassador, you miss Michael Steele's adorable giggle at the table over just how absurd that is. And yet it feels like they are setting that up as a predicate to do whatever they want, wherever they want, that if their power comes from an emergency, then they can say that they are simply preventing emergencies all across the globe. What say you?
Well, they can say what they want, but they don't get to have their own facts. Just because you use the word strategic or geopolitical decision, there's no way the Secretary Bessent believes any of that nonsense that he just says. There's no way he believes it. And I'm glad that Senator Paul spoke out a bit about it, and others need to do so as well. Now, I don't live in Washington. You all know politics there better than I do. I'm not looking for any heroes. I'm just looking for people to act in their own self-interest. And when Americans, 80-20, say this is a bad idea, you don't have to have a PhD in political science to understand which way you should be moving if you want to win re-election. And you all had me on when my book came out recently. It's called Autocrats versus Democrats. Since I was on your show, I've been to 20 different cities, most of them red states, speaking all over the country. And anytime I mention this idea, I get applause lines from very red states. I just think the president is completely out of step with the American people on this. And if you're Secretary Rubio or you're the vice president and you want to run for election, you better think twice before you sign up to this crazy, crazy idea.
I will say, I think it's notable that the folks we've seen out talking about this, forcefully defending it, to the ambassador's point, it was the Treasury Secretary doing the rounds on the weekend show. Secretary Rubio was not leaping from the hills, child, to defend.
Isn't he Secretary of State?
Secretary of State, also the
NSA,
National Security Advisor. Also, I guess he's overseeing whatever we are not legally doing in Venezuela. I think the ambassador is making a good point. And we kind of chatted about this earlier in our afternoon chit chat right before we watched Alicia do double duty today. And I think that this is about power. It is not lost on me that today, obviously MLK Day, we're celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. King. Dr. King felt very clearly, he has this famous quote about the military and defense. He says, a nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. He wasn't just condemning war. He was condemning or indicting a way of thinking about power. And I think that Dr. King's argument about domination being more important than domination, specifically when it's cloaked in like security, national security, strategy, needs. That's what Trump is saying and doing. I think when he said this in 1967, who knew it would still be so relevant to what's going on today? What we are seeing in Greenland echoes that warning when we're seeing language that's cloaked in the language of this is about national security. This is about strategy. This is about what we need as Americans when it's not. It's about power at the end of the day. Everything he's doing is about power. He is trying to consolidate power. I'm not surprised that the president is acting like an imperial president abroad when he clearly at home, they believe in a unitary executive. He believes he can do whatever the hell he wants here within the confines of the United States of America. Why should we believe that thought would stop him at our water's edge?
Yeah, exactly. And he has people who are enabling him and telling him that he ended 8 wars. That's just not true.
Thank you for saying it. It's not true.
It's
What
not
are the 8
true.
wars?
But that's why he thinks he's entitled to the Nobel Peace Prize, and then he's trying to pressure the Norwegian government into giving him the Nobel Peace Prize. But he's threatening to invade Greenland and going to war with the Danish government. It's just all not making sense. But shame on the people who are in positions of power surrounding him, who have the ear of the president, who are feeding him these lies that he ended 8 wars, who are encouraging him to go along with this and not pushing back on him as forcefully as they should. And same goes with the feckless Republicans in Congress, because this is absolutely insane that we're even sitting at this table having this conversation. And I know people will say, well, it's just Trump being Trump, and he's just trolling the Danish government or the Norwegian government. No, that is not true. I think that he actually thinks that he is emboldened enough to get away with this, that he can do this. He wants ultimate power, and he sees this as an opportunity to flex that power.
Ambassador, the hat says it all. Make America go away. What does that tell you about the mindset, the sentiment of our European neighbors, friends, allies? And how will that feed what European governments do next, that sentiment?
Just as an American, it's embarrassing for me to see that. I've lived years of my life in Europe. These are our closest allies. When we were attacked, they went to war with us, including Denmark. You know, their soldiers died next to us. The president seems to forget that. And I just think the implications are much bigger than a lot of people are anticipating. What's going to happen if we go it alone in this imperial conquest? We're going to lose our NATO allies. We're going to turn Europeans against us. They're going to sanction us. They're going to, you know, at a minimum, make us stand in line for visas rather than visa-free travel. And they're going to go a different direction. Look at what the Canadians are doing right now. He still, you know, we all said it wasn't serious, but he said, I want to make Canada the 51st state of America. Well, now they're signing deals with the Chinese because in this world, we're not the only superpower. Countries have options. And down the road, if we continue down this will be America alone. And this will have big consequences for our security and our prosperity. I mean, look at where those submarines from Russia come. Without talking about things I shouldn't, that I used to be in the government and looking at, Greenland is not the only territory that they go by. And you probably wouldn't be surprised if we might have other bases and intelligence capabilities in those other territories that are part of NATO. In picking up Greenland through imperial conquest, we lose all those others. And we lose, I think, in the long run, the entire world because people don't like empires. We had that, been there, done that. That idea died in the 19th century. After World War II, we said no more empires, no more colonies. And if we want to go back nostalgically to the 19th century, the rest of the world will not come with us.